Hello, everybody, and welcome to MaMa LiveTalks. This is our monthly series of conversations with artists, activists, and leaders who are shaping our community today. As many of you may know, La Mama is celebrating our 60th anniversary this season, and we are celebrating with more art. Yes, if we have learned anything over the past 2 years, it is that the world needs artists and artists need support, which is why we're so excited to have 11 resident artists this season. Tonight, I am excited to introduce three of these incredible artists. We have with us tonight Deepali Gupta, Adham Hafez, and Sophia Gutchinov, all three very different artists working in their own disciplines. And we're going to talk to all of them. We're going to show you some performances, talk about their work, and come together at the end. So first, if you're ready, I would like to welcome Deepali to the stream. Hi, Deepali, how are you?
Hi there. I'm good. I just kind of anxiously moved around because my dog was barking so much and so loudly that I was like, "Oh, I can't stream around her right now." So
I
I'm
would
a
love
little
for
out of
your
breath.
dog to enter the stream. If they come in the room, you have to show on camera.
Obviously, she'll pose.
Oh, good, good, good. Well, welcome. We're so happy you're here. I'm so happy you're a resident artist because I've seen your work sort of around town over the past couple of years, and I'm excited to actually meet you. So before we take a look at the clip you shared with us, I would love if you could tell us a little bit about your art, your artistry, and how you identify in your work and just about yourself.
Yeah. So I think in terms of artistic role and discipline, I identify in a lot of ways. As a composer, as a playwright, as a performer, and I think where I place my artistry right now is that a lot of my work is involving kind of like archive or found material or histories or personal histories and excavating them. Um, that's kind of uh, come to be what my work is right now, but I think as to how I got there, it was just kind of years of taking on any project um, that just like inspired curiosity in me, like kind of artistic curiosity. And sometimes that didn't go so well. Like there were collaborations that turned out a little sour, but I'd say that before I was ever making my own work and putting that in front of audiences, I was just filling all kinds of roles within different collaborations.
I love that you started from curiosity. That can be such a dangerous and like fertile ground to be on.
Yeah,
um, so I would love if we could take a look at your song already
I love
and share
that.
that with everyone.
I'm already in love with you, and I will change my life for you, and I will change where I live for you, and I will change who I am for you.
Deepali, that is so beautiful. I love that song and I can feel it like clawing its way out of you when you perform it. It's beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so this is an older song for me. This is like one of the first songs I wrote when I started writing music for myself again, which was only like 2017. And I was also coming out of a really intense initial manic episode, and and I was at my parents' house, kind of like resting and recovering before I went back to my own life. And they have this piano that's like the piano I played when I was a child, and I just recorded all these songs that were just like layers of very simple piano over each other. And yeah, and there were these like 7 or 8 songs that came out of that period, and this was one of them. And the first time I ever performed this song, it was for a reading of my show I Love You Stranger, which is the show that it's a part of. And I was so nervous because I had never presented a full reading of anything that just I did before, and felt like there were so many people in the room. But um, and I wasn't sure about this song because it does just repeat the same stanza three. I just wasn't sure about it. It didn't feel um, these songs didn't feel like songs I had written before, like songs I sang before. But it stands out to me as just like one of um, my most like powerful performance memories, because I sang it like sitting down at a desk, and I could feel what it felt like when I sing the same thing twice, and then when I sing the same thing 3 times. And I'm I'm interested in different repetition structures and lyrics. Like when do we want to hear the same words again? When are we like asking to go back to a previous sentiment? Um, yeah, so I've also just like kept this song with me over the years because there are so many different ways to perform it based on my mood, my mental state, like where my voice is, like what the context is. One of my friends saw me do this song once, and he was like, "That was kind of the boring version." I was like,
Oh
"What do you
my
mean?" Like,
God.
usually when you do that song, and then he like did a couple of things.
That's a
Um,
friend before.
yeah. And so even when I was choosing the video of like what to send to, I had to choose between the more boring but a little more vocally coherent performance of this song, um, which is the one that I showed you. No offense to that clip, I love it. But there's like another video of me performing this song where I'm like, oh, I'm like lunging at the audience. Yeah, and so that's what I like about that song, is that it can carry a lot.
I love that too. I felt that. And something about it being cyclical, like repetition is how we learn things as children. And I feel like in hearing you sing it, you learn something new every time you say the words.
Thank you.
Um, I would love to know I mean, you do a lot of autobiographical work, right?
Yeah.
And I would love to know what that is like, and if you've ever, how you found either the courage to do that or just the burning need to do that and what it's like for you.
Yeah, I try and like characterize the impulse a lot, because I don't know if it doesn't feel like a burning need. Like it doesn't feel like this like, oh, I need to get my story out there in the world. Um, I think it's just become this muscle that developed. Like when I first moved to New York, I worked with the civilians, and I did a lot of research with them, and then later did like lyrics for some of their songs. And there was something about the process of working with found text with them that gave me this idea that I could, like, for example, turn the found text of my father's criminal trial into the second act of a play. And so it's kind of like being in contexts where I was working with unusual source materials that were outside of myself, and they were also often someone's very intimate emotional story, and we had to treat that with respect. I was just really attracted to that work. And then as a songwriter, like I kind of like moved away from writing more confessional personal songs in high school and college to writing pretty conventional musical theater. Um, and so when I started writing material that felt like it was entering more into my life, it was like this dual stream of like, suddenly it felt like I was in high school again. And there was that same sense of like, this is only for me, this stays in my notebook. Like no one was asking me to like do a concert of my songs. No one around me, even my collaborators, they didn't know I sang. Um, and and so it's a combination of that, like impulse to work through things with writing, not to like look back and process, but actually to write my way through like a experience or crisis that I'm facing. And then I've also just been kind of like drawn to approach these things really I don't know, like analytically. I don't know if it's just a way of like distancing myself while still exploring the experience, but it feels like the exciting thing to me about doing autobiographical work is that no person is just themselves. Like we're all the products of so many like rules about the world that we live in, whether we can abide or can't abide by those rules. And and so I really like exposing the social constructions and like and all the various underpinnings of these stories, which doesn't always feel like going deep inside. Like I don't know that either of my autobiographical shows like really explore like my truest, deepest feelings about the matter. Like that's not what they're there to do. But I like to think that there can be some kind of like troublesome context around my personal story when it goes into my work.
That's so interesting. And I can also, I'm fascinated by hearing that already, and some other songs came out of this period of a manic episode, and seeing the sort of structure of that content mingle together. I would love to hear more if you'd like to share in your bio, at least. I know you identify as a sort of a scholar of mad studies, which is an area that's, I don't think, represented enough in art, and especially in mainstream musical theater or any of the musical theater genre. Could you tell me a little bit about that and neuroqueerness?
Yeah, and neurodivergence, I feel like really hesitant to speak with any kind of like authority on these like subjects or disciplines or ways of identifying because I think my relationship with these concepts has been really personal and subjective. But I think like mad studies, which like isn't really any kind of official discipline of study, at least not in the United States, I think it both pertains to like it being a field of study and scholarship that like centers the experiences of people who identify as mad or neurodivergent or psychosocially disabled or neuroqueer. I sometimes like to just like list all the words that I know that people use for themselves, and then think about like there are probably ones that I don't know. And I think in can also be this is the one that feels really hard to explain to me, and I wish that I had like a really like I can think of the exact quote that I want and don't have, but thinking of a way of thought, a way of academic thought and like rhetorical thought that doesn't impose a certain like neurological framework, either on to the author or the reader, if that makes sense. Like that, that I think writers who write about their neurodivergence in a way that I really connect with are often describing like the experience of letting like your mind go free, letting your brain think in the way that it does most naturally, and let that be the way that you communicate and the way that you express yourself, like without any kind of like manipulating or filtering your communication through whatever the social norms of communication in that setting or in that culture are. And yeah, I really now I've kind of trailed off, because I think what happens to me when I do discuss neurodivergence is that my mind isn't as much like I for like 30 seconds at least, I didn't think about like my goal of answering your question at all. And then when I thought about it again, I didn't remember what I was talking or thinking about, and then sometimes I even just like don't know where I am for a second. But I came back. I guess what I mean about neurodivergence or neuroqueerness, if I'm trying to like define it, I think it's a way, it's like a way of like everyone relating to their brains, because if we think about minds and different kinds of minds on a like a pathology framework, where there are like mental illnesses and disorders and diagnosable conditions that are all kind of like littered along this like abnormal spectrum, and then you have like whatever mental health is, and like whatever that looks like and is defined by like who is the most mental healthy of us all. But I think a neurodiversity framework just takes that mode of categorization and diagnosis out of it a bit, and doesn't doesn't pathologize someone's experience as a disorder or as a disease, and saying that all of these are just like normal and healthy variations in human neurological experience. So it can do all these things, but I think it's ultimately just kind of resetting language a little bit. I think with mental health, it's so sometimes just comes down to really small choices and decisions that have been made about language and categorization, and just the huge reverberations those decisions have.
Yeah, I love hearing you talk about, thank you for such a full-bodied answer to that.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
The question, no, I'm glad you did, because it was not a question with any sort of possible clear answer. And I love hearing you talk about language in the way that mirrors how the brain works and how every brain works differently, especially. And I feel like so much traditional theater, even when, you know, pathology is represented, it's fetishized or glorified, or you know, manipulated, especially on feminized bodies in one way or another. So that's one thing I really enjoy in your work is feeling the full expression of your mind come to light. So thank you for sharing that with us. And I feel like I could talk to you all day, but I'm going to welcome on Adham next, and we'll bring you back to Deepali at the end for a goodbye. So thank you so much for sharing your art with us.
Thank you.
And I'll see you in a moment. Adham, welcome to the stream.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here and for bringing this wonderful splash of color.
Oh, thank you.
So Adham, I've got plenty of questions for you because you are, dare I say, a scholar and a theorist and an essayist and in so many different areas, but I'd love to hear you talk about where you see yourself as an artist, at least right now in this moment.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's a question that is always in progress and changes every day. I mean, today I spent a lot of time writing about death and data in a new internet world. But then throughout the day, I had a meeting on the exhibition that I'm curating that's coming up next with our digital arts company, Wizara, that is focused more on working with the blockchain and the metaverse and trying to demystify these tools and words even to our colleagues, artists, culture workers. As an artist myself, I am a performing artist or performance artist. I perform. I make performances that do different things, whether this is singing or dancing or writing or talking. But it involves being with people, whether being with people digitally, like now on this call, or being with people in the same room offline and physically. And it's something I've done since I was 8. I've been performing, I've been on stage ever since I was 8. I studied music and dance, so I was trained in classical music. I was a violinist and then I became a singer. And then I went to study dance. So it's really very body-based and choreographed kind of practice. And from there, I started my company in 2006, Haskal platform, that combines all of this. So the group of people that I work with who are amazing artists scattered across the world come from dance and music and text-based work and multimedia-based live performance. There's always an element of liveness. So we do less and less pre-recorded kind of work, whether as sound or as image. So liveness, and being together. So I don't know what kind of art practice that is, but these are the two main things I like doing, being with people and being live.
I think that's the perfect encapsulation of an artist's life. Thank you for that. And I think that's the perfect precursor to the clip that we're going to show, which is from Cairo Kit Kat Club, a piece that you, correct me if I'm wrong, curated, conceptualized, and sort of directed with your platform for MaMa in the past year. So let's go ahead and hit that, Pierce, and share with our audience. A COVID striptease.
Yeah, remember those days? Sort of still
Oh
going
my
on.
God. Yeah, what a harkening back to that. There
Yeah.
is something so beautifully sexy and funny and perfectly unique about that clip. What can you tell us about Cairo Kit Kat Club and what sparked that idea?
Well, we started working on the project just before everything shut down. So we started during the last couple of months of 2019. We were working on another piece that premiered in November that was very apocalyptic in a world, I kid you not, where people are going around wearing masks and wearing plastic gloves, and it's a world full of pathogens and pollution. And it was like this dark science fiction about things that have happened 150 years ago. And while we were doing this, we were working in London at the National Archives. And then we started finding all these documents about alternative histories in regards to entertainment that we had no idea about. And it concerned a lot of mobility of artists between New York and London and Berlin and Cairo in Egypt, which is where I come from. And we found this story of this club called the Kit Kat Club, which was a cabaret that no longer exists. It was demolished in the late 20th century. But this cabaret hosted so many radical pioneering artists, but also politicians and belly dancers and spies and socialites. And the more we dig into these stories, we find crazy connections between the cabaret and nightlife scene in New York with that in Cairo in Egypt, and then via London or Berlin. And we started working on it, and then everything shut down. And we were like, how are we going to do this? Cabarets are about intimacy. And like there's this meta level because it keeps going back to the past. So it looks at early 20th century. And then we started thinking of the Spanish flu in the early 20th century and how entertainment had to organize itself around this in certain places in the world. So we staged this thing that is digital with live elements, entirely created through our laptops. So we were filming in New York, and then with my colleagues in Berlin, and then with the others in Cairo and in Saudi Arabia and in Athens. And at the end, the product that you see was this 1 hour cabaret performance that brought together all these artists and scholars as well from different countries.
It's beautiful because you really found a way, I feel like watching that, to bring to life in the most unexpected way those invisible connections that you only can find through archival history and research across countries, and made it explicit with all of these different clips from different places. And I love that whole evening of work. So folks, if you're watching, you should go look through our archives and find it. So I'm curious, I have a lot of questions for you because of the breadth of your work, body of work. One thing that I've read about in your research is aesthetic injustice. And I'm curious what you can tell us about that, its meaning, it's what it means to you, and how we can, if you have any ideas on how we're developing alternate canons of correcting that injustice.
Thank you. This is a very dear issue to me, and really it's wonderful to be asked to talk about it. I'll try to be very brief because it's a very big topic and it's something that I've been working on for a long while. Yeah, so signal to me when I'm talking too much. But very briefly, it's so easy for us to think that a certain way of doing things in the arts is the correct way, or that this is how modernism looks in painting, or this is how postmodernism looks in dance, or this is how a contemporary music piece should sound like. So we tend to think that certain aesthetics are backed by a certain consensus, almost like there is a certain aesthetic consensus around certain objects and how they appear, or certain ways of dance and how they portray certain physical qualities or emotions. And if we look closer, we'll easily realize that it's a consensus that is produced politically. It's an artificial one. It's a consensus that changes. So as politics change from one time to another, this kind of art form is celebrated, or this kind of art form is no longer relevant, or is not funded, or is made to disappear, or is accidentally poorly archived. or it's an art form that is associated with a certain kind of population or demography in the city. And if we don't like that demography or this neighborhood, then this art form is sidelined. Does this mean it disappears? We never know, because sometimes it takes a decade or two or more, and then things re-emerge. Maybe this happens faster now in the world of the internet. But very broadly, it is connected also to a strong colonial history and a colonial politics that would support a certain kind of aesthetic over the other, that would make us believe that this is more beautiful and this is kitsch, while merely they're all equal systems of aesthetics. And if we engage in such thinking that this is relevant or modern and this is kitsch and not relevant and so on, if we engage in such judgments, then we are involved in some form of cognitive injustice or aesthetic injustice. So this is really like a very big, broad project that involves a lot of people that we've been working with for a while, but like I'm trying to summarize it here.
No, thank you. That was incredibly concise and specific. What do you think about, I'm hearing this and thinking, as an audience member, I am complicit in furthering these norms and this injustice for audiences who are going out to see a show but want to participate in the broadening and equality of art. How do we approach mending that?
I myself, I mean, we all are part of this because we're wired to think in these terms, and how a canon is formed and how it is governed and maintained. It takes a lot of power behind it. So there are powerful institutions, and there is a regime of power that operates in a way to keep these segregation going on. For me, I just try to remind myself when there's something that I don't find beautiful or I don't immediately read, like I look at it, I'm like, I have no idea what this is. I don't know where to place this. Is this traditional or is this contemporary? Is this a very local practice or is it a modern, quote unquote? I just either go and ask the people that are practicing this. I'm like, tell me, what is this? And tell me a bit about its context. Or I just try to suspend the judgment by telling myself, if I don't understand it, maybe it just belongs to another system and different codes and different aesthetic canons that I have no access to, and that's okay. Some things I just don't like because I don't like them, and that's my taste. That's also okay. But I try to, as a curator, I mean, this is an exercise I have to do a lot to remind myself that my taste is not an empirical reality, and my taste is not the truth. Even if it is backed by narratives and arguments from the academic world, it does not mean also that these academic arguments are the truth or are the only truth. Yeah, so just like I sort of try to suspend the judgment and take a step back and tell myself there might be a system that I have absolutely no understanding of, and I should be curious to learn about it.
Yeah, and it's so hard. I mean, there's such a human urge to categorize and to put things into beautiful or not, which we know is subjective, and we can hear it a million times, but it's hard to decentralize the self. And I know what's best in some way.
Absolutely.
And so I'm interested, tell us more about your platform you created, Harakat, and the history and the work that you're doing right now, if there's anything specific you'd like to plug.
Sure. Well, Harakat was created in 2006 in Cairo, in Egypt, actually. And then we wanted to start a collective where artists from different practices could come together to create live performances. And as I said, by that we mean things that included media and digital art and sound art. And then as the years went by, a lot of us left, some immigrated, some had to leave for reasons, multiple different reasons. And we realized that this is actually something very powerful, because we become this network of international artists who are insisting on collaborating, even though it gets more and more difficult the more distance there is between us. But because of being in different places, it also means that while we started by working very locally, now we work in a very international way with local partners in the cities where we live and work. And it's just been very exciting. So we've done big projects in Berlin and in New York and in different countries where we don't live at all. But because of our networks in these cities, it starts to unravel other regional kind of interesting partnerships. And I call it partnerships because we really enter into long-term dialogues with artists, like artists that we've worked with once are artists that we continue to work with. we are a very small core group, but my colleagues and I constantly try to learn and see what others are doing. Particularly the very small core team, Lamia Gouda and Mona Gamil and Adam Koharski are just, the three of them are wonderful thinkers beyond being performers and artists themselves. So they also come in with their research questions and their ideas and the kind of networks of people, whether these are artists, or even audiences that were like, why don't we talk with people in this city about that thing? Because we think we want to talk with them. And we're now working specifically on a new revival of an old project that was called Frankenstein, which we created in 2009, that was trying to ask, what does the word monster mean today? Like in a world where we don't believe in monsters in the mythical folktale kind of sense, what does the word monster, when we hear it, what do we think of? So we worked on it in 2009 and created this multimedia performance, and now we're trying to think how to bring it back to life. And then we're creating other projects that are more digital with our sister platform, Muzara, that is, as I said, is focused more on the blockchain and metaverse. So there we're working on a project on dreams with a choreographer from Berlin. Her name is Mai Saifan. And the project has started 10 years ago. She started it 10 years ago, interviewing people about dreams that they have when they are under a state of emergency. So she would interview refugees, people in cities undergoing war, and then would take these dreams and stage them into performances. And now, 10 years later, we have this massive archive of dreams that we're trying to stage into a digital performance through avatars and sound composition.
Oh, that's incredible. I can't wait to see that develop. And that makes me think, you know, you working in so many different regions with people from across the world, do you feel like if you're working on a performance in a specific country, do you feel like that the country influences either the process or the final work that is presented in some way?
Absolutely, and no, it's the two at the same time. Absolutely, because there are institutional realities also that shape how we work, whether this is funding or the curatorial interest of a certain cultural organization, or what the city dwellers are now worried and concerned about. What are the politics that trouble them, or what are the questions that people are thinking about? So this, of course, shapes what we work on. But then no, because of the displacement and the kind of intercity or intercontinental kind of group that I'm working with, so it becomes many questions from many cities, and it becomes many institutional realities. Sometimes it becomes a dissonance where it's not easy to co-produce this thing because this is how it works in New York, but this is not how it works in Cairo or in Berlin, you know? So it's interesting because sometimes we found ourselves having to change a certain framework or even change the convention of what we're creating. Like I've had pieces that were supposed to be live performances and then they became a radio play, or a dance piece I remember that we curated to present here in New York, and it ended up being a Skype-based performance. So that's way before the pandemic and Zoom, where it was unheard of to perform on Skype, but then we had to. The woman was in Damascus and she wasn't allowed to travel. So what are we gonna do? So yeah, I mean, reality and the cities where we are, and because there are multiple cities, it does, of course, shape the work.
Thank you. Yes. And as we move on forward with this evening, how can folks find your platform? Is it haraka.com.org?
Yeah, so harakaplatform.com or on Instagram, that's Haraka Platform. And then Wizara's website is the easiest. It's wizara.io. So it's easy to find.
Wonderful. Thank you. I encourage anyone watching to explore Adham's work. Thank you for chatting with me. I look forward to bringing you back in a couple minutes. Next, I'd like to welcome Sophia Gutchinov to the stream. Come on in, the water's warm. Hey, Sophia, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Lovely to see
Happy
you.
to be here.
Sophia, you are an artist who, you know, from meeting you a couple times and doing some research, you work all across the map as an actor, as a comedian, as a writer. Does that sum it up, or what else? What do you do? How do you Speak about yourself as an artist.
Yeah, I'm like a lot of things. I like to say that I'm a hyphenated artist. I like to say that I'm a creator or creative type. Yeah, I do all those things. I do also voiceovers and some modeling, and activism. But yeah, I'm basically someone who uses a lot of different mediums to get across my message or create whatever I'm creating, whether that be comedy, in film or live, sketch comedy, and a lot of my own content I've been creating a lot in the quarantine and post, during this time we're living in, which has been really fulfilling and great. Just how I, got connected again with you guys at La Mama. So yeah, I'm like all those things and more as one of the other artists that I'm constantly developing and changing and who I am and what I am. So I cannot be defined. If that makes sense.
Indefinable. Undefinable?
Yeah. Undefined. I actually made a perfume. Oh, it fell. With my friend at this place in Soho, and I named it Undefined.
Oh, beautiful.
And I was thinking about my show that I'm creating with you guys, and I was like, identity, undefined, being mixed, this crazy time. And I was like, maybe I'll do something with that. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, I like that. There's something there. And on that note, I would love to show folks a couple clips that we've put together from your work that encompass at least a little bit the breadth of what you do.
Okay.
So let's roll that and then come back and chat.
All right, hello. My name is Sophia Gutchinov. And I am here as a half Mongolian artist to speak to you. You're too white to create art. You're really hot for an Asian girl. You're so exotic. You want to be my sub? Pork fried rice, lo mein. I hope your white dad hates you. Yeah, but where is your dad really from? Does your dad even speak English? Okay, but where are you really from? Wow, I've never met anyone from there. You're so different looking. You're not really Asian though, right? Well, you're not like them. You're not even white. Oh yeah, you're kinda Asian. Gook, chink, me so horny, and then of course the famous squinty eye movement, which we all have experienced. These are just a handful of things I have been told as a half Asian American female. These are the G-rated ones too. I am here to speak to the senators to do something. I am here to speak for people who feel like they could be the next name in the headline tomorrow. I am here to speak for the ones who have felt uncounted for far too long. You see my shirt? What does it say? Go ahead, tell me, I'm asking you.
Made in America.
Made in America. Okay, right. So that's me. I was actually made here. I don't need to go back to anywhere. I don't need anyone telling me where I'm from and where I belong, because I belong alongside every other opportunity that's been starved from minorities for way too long. We're not going to take it anymore.
Lady Liberty dies a little more every time we are silent. Every time a black woman goes missing, every time a black man is killed by a cop without reasoning, every time you are racially profiled, every time a child is sold into human trafficking, every time another crime against humanity goes without an arrest. The American flag still is praised. This country is said to be the land of the free and home of the brave. But how can these divided states of America have allowed so many to escape worse living conditions in their homeland to find peace here, yet we still have such deep-rooted issues with race? My grandparents were in work concentration camps and saw America as the answer. And it was, for them. Let freedom ring, right? Well, why does freedom exist on a spectrum?
Thank you, Sophia. You have such a powerful voice and presence. And even when you're not on the screen and we're just hearing you talk, it like booms through the audio.
Thank you. I haven't seen that stuff in a while, just like one of the other artists. And I was like, wow, all right, I remember saying that. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
I'm interested in what it was like to, you've sort of, we saw some different clips there. One was a performance piece with you as Lady Liberty, and one was voiceover over this collage piece that you had created. What was the artistic impulse for those, and how did it feel to kind of be moving into the digital sphere at that
Sure.
point?
So I went to Marymount Manhattan College and I got my BFA in acting. I also studied neuroscience. So I have a multidisciplinary, hyphenated, like, lifestyle looking at things. And I took experimental theater with Mary Fleischer as my capstone my last year. And we learned a lot about experimental theater and LaMama and all of that. And I was looking at Yoko Ono's piece that she did before she even married John Lennon at MoMA, called Cut Piece, where she wears her like best suit as a female, but she's wearing a suit and she's a female, it's not a dress. And she allows everybody to cut off a piece of her suit. And it's like a really expensive piece. And it has to do with feminism and a bunch of different things. And I really liked that. So for my project, I decided to be inspired by her. And I did this. I had New York Times article headlines because it was 2017, 2016. And, Islamophobia was very prevalent, as it still is. I mean, any kind of xenophobia is always happening, right? But this was the one that was at least being covered the most with the wars in the Middle East. So I was inspired to bring that to light. So I created a cape basically of this, of all the headlines. And I had my Halloween costume from a few years ago, which was the dying Statue of Liberty, to represent whatever you wanted it to represent, from 2016. And I covered myself, and then I had everybody rip off a piece of the newspaper to reveal the dying Statue of Liberty. And I really liked that piece and I wanted to bring it to life. So after George Floyd was murdered and, everyone was protesting and there was real motivation to actually speak up about things, I decided to create some art, when we were still home. And I went on my roof and I recorded that dying Lady Liberty in the camera for as long as he was in the position that he was being held in. I think it was 8 minutes and 19 seconds, something like that. It was about 9 minutes. My eyes were in pain because of the contacts, but obviously it's not nearly as much pain as anyone would face in that situation. But I was trying to show that in a performance art piece, which I did. And then I took that costume and I nailed it to this board, which is used to cover up like abandoned buildings. And then I wanted to create the vision piece, which I called 2020. We're so woke that we're so it's about the culture that we now live in. And I'm trying to encompass not just one race, but the whole world and women and children. So I include different Madonna and child visions. That's like, the Vatican. And then I have a Mexican artist, and I have a Native American artist. I have a Black artist. I have a Russian artist. And I'm trying to show that like the children are innocent, yet they are criminalized depending on their race, which needs to stop. And it has to start with us as adults to educate the children and also look within ourselves, because we all have some kind of internalized racist or prejudice. So that is where all of that came from. Yes.
Thank you. And I really appreciate, especially where you're standing outside, the immediacy of it and the responsibility you take as an artist. You can feel it.
Thank you.
And I'm so interested in, well, you have these pieces of immense gravity, and what we aren't showing the audience right now is your other work as a sketch comedian, which is so
very
funny.
Different.
And so how do you find the relationship between, in your artistry, between the seriousness of what's in front of you and also this comedic side?
Yeah. So with my piece that I'm creating with LaMama, I want to include all of this serious topics, but I also want to include, entertainment and comedy and life. You can't ever take yourself too seriously, right? I mean, that's what I try to practice. So I don't know, I do use my humor as a coping mechanism. I always have. I created a lot of comedy in the quarantine about unemployment being this fuck boy who doesn't call you back and you can't get through to him, yet you're just left hanging, but you need to talk to him, but it's like, oh my God, he doesn't call me. So I made like a commercial about that with one of my creative partners. And in the quarantine, we weren't allowed to like go anywhere, right? So I was really excited to go to like CVS and the grocery store. And I remember Stefan, one of my favorite SNL sketches from Weekend Update, talking about, New York's hottest club is. And I recreated that to talk about how New York's hottest club is the grocery store, just trying to like poke fun at like the only thing we could laugh at the time. Yeah, but I did do a pretty clear way of including comedy and the seriousness of what's going on in the world when I did a piece a year ago about politics in America and like Biden and Trump. And I personified America as like America having founding daddy issues. Like, and how like Biden's the first, the oldest guy she's ever been with, but she was forced in this arranged marriage with Trump because the electoral college is still ruining her life. So that kind of stuff. But yeah, I try to find a balance. I mean, honestly, when the idea strikes me, the inspiration, I kind of just like go with it, and the comedy and the lighter elements come, but there's always truth to what I'm saying. Like, that's what I learned in like school and classes, and like other comedians and artists I look up to, is that, they have to say this message. It has to be said. They need to tell their story. It's not about competing about what's already been done or who's doing it. It's about how they need to get this off their chest. And it comes from a layer of truth, because I find that comedy is funny, at least to me, when it's relatable, truthful, and you don't expect it, So, yeah.
Yeah. The funniest comedy is also true. I
Yeah.
see as well. And you mentioned this being a really fertile time for you as an artist. What has that been like? And was it difficult or a natural transition to be creating digital art?
Yeah, well, I haven't. I've done a lot of things in person. I've done film, obviously, of course, but it has been a little bit of a learning curve, doing everything at home myself. But I kind of like I have like a little process now, which is great. I really wanted to do a set for stand-up in like April last year, but things were still shut down. So I just spontaneously created a video of like me just talking on my phone when I was commuting to go to Ridgewood, Queens from Upper Manhattan. And the trains were so delayed. And I was just talking about how like the MTA works in mysterious ways, like how God works in mysterious ways. And I was like explaining how it's either on your side or not. So yeah, I mean, that was me trying to do stand-up, but doing it without anybody in front of me, just looking at my phone, and the audience is whoever watches it. So it's been a learning curve, but I really want to bring in the multimedia aspect of having live performance with video, film, voiceover, whatever, images. So I'm excited to combine them now that we can be in person and sit with an audience, a real audience in person, not on Zoom.
Yeah, feel it in person. So it sounds like if you're picturing the trajectory of your artistry moving forward, it's sort of expanding into even more multimedia sphere than maybe before.
Yeah, definitely more than I ever have done. Like, I'm not afraid to use technology, whereas before I'm like, oh well, let's just keep it traditional, where now I'm like, no, let's throw everything at the wall. So yeah,
I love that. And do you have any current sources of inspiration or anything that's sort of carrying you through this time, or things that give you ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot of research in my own like healing journey right now, being like a young female in New York and dealing with this time. So I've been researching a lot about like generational trauma, which is like, it sounds kind of like woo woo, but honestly it's real. And I think about like what I learned about in like legitimate neuroscience class and like epigenetics, and then like spiritual stuff. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot of connections. So learning about like lineage, being a woman, your ancestors, your genes, health issues, all of that. And that's been allowing me to really like have some powerful things to say. I also like want to talk about personal experiences, and then like learning about like violence against women. That's important. But also encompassing race and the question of identity and community and purpose and like our soul and like why are we here? What are we doing? Why are we all still alive in this pandemic? Because there's a lot of people that are no longer with us. And I try to be positive and hopeful. And, like it's crazy how, at least I'm still in New York and I know a lot of people moved and I'm like, well, I'm not, I want to be here. I want to create. And like, if you want to move, that's cool. But like, for me, I feel like there's a reason why I'm still here, like here in New York, here in alive. And I want to say something. And, whoever's still around who wants to see and feel art and be in the creative space, like it's an amazing time. Cause it's like, it does kind of feel like a little bit of a renaissance, at least I'm trying to believe that. So yeah. Hope that answers.
It does more than that. And I'm fascinated by thinking about neuroscience finding its way into your art and legitimizing all of the areas of study that you're going into, especially with you as a live performer, your body being the place where this art happens and where it filters through. Yeah, I think that's fascinating. And I know not all of our resident artists are creating pieces specifically with La Mama this season, but I know that's something that you have on the horizon. Is there anything any hints you'd like to drop to us or anything to look out for in the future?
I mean, honestly, it's just gonna be like autobiographical, like the other artist said. Yeah, I don't know yet. I'm really in like the fetus, like one cell phase. But yeah, I'm excited. I've been writing, thinking about like gesture, dance, voiceover, images, multimedia, poetry, very personal, very like confessional, like how my speech was, which you showed a piece of when I gave the speech in front of City Hall, like very just like no like just this is what it is, like kind of raw in that way, like gritty, I guess.
Yeah, I love the immediacy of your art. I meet you and I feel it right away. And it makes me think of, we have a resident artist last season named Muriel Borst-Tarrant. And she said in the last live talk I watched, if you have something to say it as loud as you can, which is what your art makes me think of.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. I'm going to welcome our other artists back to the stream now.
Oh, I did want to say this. You talked about the dog. I'm dog sitting and Juno is here. Her owner's picking her up right after, but I wanted to include her. This is Juno.
Oh, Juno.
I'm trying to pick her up.
What a beauty.
Kind of big. So this is Juno.
Our
She's been with me the whole time.
Artist.
Yeah, I've been talking to her about La Mama, sharing art. I think she's
I would love to see her next paw print collage.
Right.
Okay, Deepali, Adham, come back in if you can and bring any dogs you have.
Yes.
I'll try and get my dog over here. She's sort of wandering around, but hey, maybe I'll go on mute and call for her.
Oh my God, is it really working? Oh, what a joy.
Here, but she's
coming
under the table. Hold on, we're just gonna have to. Hello,
oh,
dog
hello,
cam.
darling. What a sweetheart. Oh, this is the perfect way to end this series. I've taken quite a bit of time to speak with each of you, so I think it's time to wrap it up. But I'm so grateful that you're here and that you're all a part of the La Mama family. Everyone, if you'd like to learn more about our artists, these resident artists and others, you can visit our website. It's www.lamama.org. And while you're there, please check out tickets for our current show. It's called Grand Panorama. It's by legendary puppeteer Theodora Skipateris. It's beautiful. And finally, if you are out there and you'd like to support our work here at La Mama, you can visit lamama.org/donate. And I'm told that 60 is our diamond anniversary, so do with that what you will. Thank you all. Thank you for being here. I look forward to meeting you in person sometime soon, and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.